I wish I could start this story with once upon a time, but it's not that kind of tale. If it were, there would be a big bad wolf and a helpless little victim ready to be devoured. There would be an epiphany, an aha moment of the power that lies within you. We know how it goes. It has a happy ending, right? I didn't want her knowing that I was so scared. I think we missed a few pages, chapters cut short to protect you from the truth. From the lovers' faces you replace, the scary run through the woods that leaves you with scars to illustrate the memories. The life lesson of never trusting again. The part of you that was robbed, now left behind. Truth is, there's more than just wolves in that forest. If this were a fairy tale, it would take place in some far-off land designed to make you feel safe in your reality. But for my mum, Lorna, nothing was as scary as the devil that walked into our home, masquerading as a pillar of the community, a toxic combination of superiority, power, masculinity, and a good old dash of manipulation. On the 26th of June 1972, Lorna Mary Meakin was born. She grew up in a big family with an older brother Tony and an older sister Donna. It was the 70s, you could leave your doors unlocked. People always come in and out. Neighbours, family, friends, even the guy at the end of the road that sang even worse after a whiskey or two. The house was the heart of the street. Mama Lena ran the house. Motherly duties ticked off the never-ending list while multitasking, applying her mascara. Lena Mascara, they called her. Hey, a girl's got to do what a girl's got to do. Nanny sat prim and proper on her chair in the corner of the living room, dozing in and out of sleep. She was 80. It was to be expected. Nanny was religious. Your traditional strict Irish Catholic lady with a mouth that puffed fire and a fist wrapped in rosary beads. Just because. Then there was Auntie May. May was Lena's sister. May filled the room with so much love. She was a child stuck in a grown woman's body, so life just hadn't caught up to her quite yet, but it didn't have to because in this house, love was all you needed to get by. Lorna, Tony and Donna grew up being very close. Music was a huge part of their lives. The radio always blaring the newest rock and roll hits. Tony, the middle child, couldn't wait to get a new record to go listen to. With a house this busy, he loved nothing more than to shut his bedroom door behind him and enter a world of rock stars and ballads. Lorna would chill in the sofa, snuggled up in her blanket watching her favourite game shows on TV. And I'll tell you something, she won every time. Donna, being the eldest, was at work, the local pharmacy. Lorna was a rough and tough tomboy kid, the type to ride her bicycle so fast down a hill, get her ankle caught in it, fall off scuffed and bruised, find it so much fun, she would do it all again. Tony was the type who loved going on adventures with his friends down to the river. Donna was bubbly and happy, and together they all made one big family that relied on each other. They weren't wealthy, money-wise, but in other ways, they had it all. Sisterhood is one of the strongest bonds in the world. There's really nothing that should ever be able to come between that. Donna would spoil Lorna after work. She would go and buy her little pens and pencils, colouring books, little knickknacks, all the little things that Lorna loved. Lorna looked up to Donna so much, like literally she was her idol. She meant the entire world to her, as I'm sure most of you can really relate to it if you have a big sister or a sibling that's older than you. They usually mean a lot and influence your life hugely. Donna was the type of big sister that would do absolutely anything for her family. She got to a point in her life where she started to experiment with dating. She was the oldest, so she had reached that age, 20. She met a guy and he was so lovely. He was like literally the type of guy that made such a huge effort to just try and fit in with the family. He knew that Donna came from a big family, so he made the effort to show them all that he too cared. For example, there was this one time where he had bought Donna a large Easter egg. It was huge and he got her name carved into it. He also, just to make my mum, Lorna, feel included, he got her a matching one with her name carved into it. It was like little details like that that just showed that he was a good guy and he cared a lot. Unfortunately, between Donna and him, it didn't work out, so they went their separate ways. Donna still continued to date, and she met another guy. His name was Ewan McIntosh. Ewan was really slim. He had blonde hair, he was charming, he charmed his way right into this family. To be precise, he was a special constable in the police, so he volunteered and worked with them that way. He worked in the shipyards up in Greenock. Now Greenock is about a 2-hour drive from my tiny little village, which is where we live, where my mum lived when she was younger, so we still live here. And It's so small here, like you really wouldn't come here for a day out. There's no petrol station, there's no bank, there's no shops. The only reason that you would be here is one, if you live here, or know someone that does live here. Ewan made his way down and was introduced to the family. He was welcomed almost immediately. He was told to come in, he could chill on the couch in the living room with the rest of the family, while Donna went upstairs to get ready for their date. They were going to go for a nice night out, so she was going to quickly change, quickly put some makeup on, and then they were going to go. While Donna was walking upstairs, she passed my Uncle Tony's bedroom, where he was in there listening to his music. Downstairs, Granny Lena was in the kitchen, and she was just doing her motherly duties, just washing, cleaning, drying, all that kind of stuff. Nanny was in the living room at this point, and she was dozed off on her chair. And Auntie May was also in the living room, but she was in a world of her own, so she never really knew what was going on when someone came in. And then there was Lorna, and she was cuddled up on the couch with a blanket over her, watching the TV. In this space of time of coming into this house, Ewan had clocked all of this faster than I could even describe it to you guys. He sat down on the couch next to Lorna, and he put his hand under the covers, under her blanket, and started stroking her leg. Now, she was 13. So at this point, she jumps up with such a fright. Obviously very confused, she runs to her mum and says, you know, he just touched my leg, and it didn't feel right. But obviously, at this age, she doesn't know how to properly articulate to an adult why this was wrong, or why it felt wrong, because I guess it maybe, to my Granny Lena, sounded like, oh, you know, he grazed my leg, or just accidentally touched it, but it wasn't like that. But my mum at this age just didn't know how to say that to an adult. This was also a time where something like this would have been shut down really, really quickly. This kind of thing wasn't spoken about back then. It wasn't Granny Lena's fault, but she shrugged it off and never really thought anything of it. And I really want to make this clear. She wasn't being malicious, she just didn't compute it like that. It didn't really go in. Ewan was part of a lot of clubs, so he managed the boys' brigade, and he also done a lot of judo. So this one night after that had happened, everything was kind of shrugged off. I guess my mum, I've never really asked her, but I guess she kind of thought, well, it was an accident and he didn't mean it. I guess she just went with that. But after a while, he had become, I guess, part of the family. Everybody had welcomed him in, and my mum loved judo. She loved judo. And that was actually something that he was teaching and part of. This one night he had arranged to come all the way down from Greenock and bring Lorna all the way up to judo, and this was going to be her first time at a class, so she was really, really excited. She got ready, got in the car with him, and they started driving up. Halfway there, it's going to be really hard for me to say to you guys, but halfway there he pulled over into a little lane that was just off the side of the road. It's somewhere where you can stop if you are running out of petrol or you need a little break or something. He stopped there. He turned the car off. He turned to my mum, who was in the front seat with him, and he spun her towards him, and then he leaned over and pulled her chair back, and he raped her. Once he had done what he had done, he finished himself off using pink toilet paper. Now, this was one thing that when I was growing up was not allowed in the house. And that might be really strange for you guys to try and understand that, but this was something that had scarred my mum forever. Even to this day, that colour of toilet paper cannot be in the house at all. My mum being so confused and so scared. And anybody that's been raped will tell you that you leave your body. You float away. You can't do anything. And especially being so young, how are you supposed to do anything? How? He just stays still, and he puts his seatbelt back on and starts driving up to judo. When they get to judo, the entire time my mum never gets to join in. She was made just to sit at the side and watch. And this was his plan all along. He knew that she was never going to get to join in. This was just a ploy to get her by herself so that he could do what he felt he wanted to do. When Mum got back home, she never really said anything to anybody because she didn't know what had just happened. She was petrified, and the first time she said it, no one really believed her, so what was she supposed to do? Ewan was still playing the character of being an amazing person, so whenever he was around Lorna and Tony and the family, he would play with all of them. He would do like judo moves with them. He would teach them that this is what would happen if you were to be bullied at school. You would grab someone, bend their arm up their back, and this is how they don't get out of it. This is a way to do this. He would wrestle with them and play with them and just continue to play this character that everybody loved. However, there were nights where Mum would leave her bedroom and everybody would still be in the house. She would go downstairs for something and he would grab her and try and kiss her, and this had happened many times. One of these times, my mum and Tony were in the car with Ewan, and Ewan turned to Mum and said, "How's about a goodnight kiss?" Now my Uncle Tony was so mad about this. He was raging, and it took a lot to calm him down, but once everybody did, and he just played off this, "I was just joking and you're taking it too far," and whatever, everybody found that weird, but maybe just, I kind of wasn't there, but maybe just a moment of, oh, he never meant anything of it, and shrugged it off again. My mum's first time had been robbed from her, This is something that is meant to be special, and it's something that's meant to be shared between someone that you love, and it's meant to mean everything. Well, that was taken from her. Sex is only beautiful when it's shared and not taken from you. My mum started losing concentration at school. Everything just didn't make sense anymore. She was like the brainiac, and brainiacs run in my family. I seem to be the only one that didn't get it. But she was so bright and was like the top of the school, always done all the maths equations properly and English. She was like ahead in every single class, but once this happened, she fell behind so much and she didn't concentrate, she didn't listen, nothing meant anything anymore. Donna and Ewan had been together at the point where they got pregnant. They were going to have a baby, and when this baby was born, it meant everything to my mum. This was obviously her big sister's baby. This was exciting, and she wanted to help in any way that she could. However, at this point, even though Donna went on to have more children to Ewan, at this point they had only had one. And Donna was still juggling work, Ewan was juggling work, and my mum wanted to help her big sister. So she said, whenever I can, I'll help babysit, because obviously school, that wasn't in my mum's mind anymore. And, my mum, she was meant to be a mum. Like always, I've always said it to her, she was meant to be a mum. She has this great love that she needs to share with everybody, so when this opportunity showed itself, she was more than happy to help. Donna had moved up to Greenock with Ewan and they had bought a house together. Because the family didn't have much money, usually what would happen is my granny would save up some money and get a taxi so it could take my mum straight from the house all the way up to Donna and Ewan's house, and this means nothing would happen to her on the way there, because this was a big journey and this was the safest way. So there was this one night where Donna was working. She was a nurse, so she'd just given birth. She was trying to juggle work, and they had said, you need to do night shifts, so she really couldn't turn this down. She had a baby to look after, so she done the night shift. Ewan was also meant to be out working really late, doing his police volunteering. So my mum was babysitting alone. She knew that she was safe because nobody was in the house except herself and the baby. Mum had put her to bed, made sure she was fed, washed, cleaned, everything like that had all been done. So Mum was laying on the couch. When she heard the door open, she knew it wasn't Donna, so she pretended to be asleep. Mum knew that it was Ewan. And I think when something like that happens to you, you can sense danger a mile away. And she knew it was him. Without even turning around, she knew it was him. So she just pretended to be asleep. He came in and he took his police uniform jacket off and he lay it on the back of the couch where Mum was sleeping. He shook her until she woke up and then he went upstairs. So my mum was thinking, what's happening here? You weren't meant to be home. She's just trying to add it all up as fast as she can. In this space of time, he comes downstairs and he's holding a bra. This is Donna's bra. He tells my mum that she's to put it on. There was no question about it. You had to do it. So she did. And then he raped her on the couch. Once he was finished, my mum had to just sit there and wait on Donna coming back. My mum at this point, she had realised that she wasn't safe. She wasn't safe. She loved this little baby so much. So much. But she couldn't go there while he was there. He was getting her everywhere that she was. She knew she wasn't safe. Fast forward a few years and my mum has met a guy. She's 16 and she falls pregnant. It's not expected, but she falls pregnant. She has the baby and she's so happy. She's so happy because this was finally a reason to leave her family home, which is crap because this was where she was once so safe. So to all of a sudden have to leave this broke her heart. Of course it did, but she now had something to take care of. Fast forward a few years later and my mum is pregnant again. She's 20 and she has this little baby girl. So now she has a boy and a girl. She was going to protect this little girl with everything that was inside her. My mum wasn't protected, but this little baby would 100% be protected because my mum understood. She would know, and she wouldn't have anybody around her that she felt that danger sense that she could have now because of what happened to her. While my mum was holding this little baby, Granny Lena was there and my mum just burst out crying and said to her, "Mum, Ewan raped me and this is what he done." I told her everything that happened, and my Granny Lena, I think she knew at this point. As I said, Donna had went on to have more babies with Ewan. One of these daughters had came over to my gran's house and my gran said to her, you know, "Oh my god, your skirt is a little bit short. Why are you wearing that?" And she hits out with, "Well, Granny, I did have a longer one on, but my dad, Ewan, told me to go and put a shorter one on. That one wasn't short enough." At this very moment, my Granny Lena knew that everything that what my mum was saying was the truth. Now, I just want to clarify, I don't think that my Granny Lena never believed my mum. I think it was the fact that she felt like this would break up the family. At one point, she was going to have to give up one daughter, and I just don't know if she was prepared for that. But after hearing what Ewan had said to his daughter, Granny Lena knew that Donna had to be told immediately because someone else was in danger. His own family. Gran and Lorna get together and she says, "Listen, you're going to need to tell Donna right here, right now." So my mum says, as scared as she must have been, she says, "You know, you're right, I need to do this." She picks up the phone and she calls Donna and she says, "Donna, I have something to tell you." And Donna says, "What is it?" And my mum says, "Ewan raped me." This phone call to this day makes no sense. Donna turns to Ewan and says to him, "Did you rape Lorna?" And all you hear in the background is, "No." Donna then says to Lorna, "I'll call you back." She puts down the phone and my mum never hears from her again. This to me made me think that Donna knew. To some extent, because why would you ask that so nonchalant, you know, like some random question like, "Did you forget to close the back door?" This was such a serious thing, like how could you just ask it like that? And to this day it's always been confusing for all of us. We don't know what happened there or anything like that, but that's the situation. Ewan was the type of person he played stupid. He was smart in all the right ways, but he knew how to play stupid and innocent. Like, oh my god, I would never do anything like that. And he had worked that so well that people started to believe him. And I don't know whether it's believing or manipulation, but he was good at it. After this phone call, the only time that my mum had contact with Donna was once when my mum got married, and she obviously wanted her sister to be there. Her sister brought him. And, you know, that was my mum's special day. She just kind of wanted it over and done with. She's seen her sister, time to move on. The only other time after that was when my Granny Lena passed away in 2007, and that was it. We'd never heard from her again. Growing up, I'd never really heard the full story. It was kind of like we are not in contact with Donna anymore just because. I know that Ewan raped mum. It was more along the lines of, that's why mum has trouble trusting. So if someone was to come to the front door, I would have to answer it. If my mum was to go for an appointment, even if it was something really personal, I was to be in the room with her. If someone was to come over to the house, whether they were friends, I was to be there. My mum would get up and move away from them, and I was to kind of sit in the room, kind of in between. Most of the time. I was to answer phones, I was to get takeaways if they came to the door, I was to kind of do everything, and it was something that I was just used to by now. This wasn't really weird for me because me and my mum, we are best friends. Like, we literally have each other's back all the time. So if my mum needed me, I was going to be there without a question. There was never going to be anything that was off the table, too awkward to talk about. We would speak openly about it. So she had told me what had happened between her and Ewan, but never the full story, so I never really knew everything. Mum had thought about coming forward for years. She, you know, it had always played in her mind. Of course she wanted him behind bars because this whole time she thought, what if? there's somebody else? What if he's doing it to somebody else? But she had never been believed. Her own sister never believed her. Her family never really listened when she was telling them what was happening. And that fear is like drilled right inside you to the point where if you can't trust your family, how are you going to trust anybody else? She also knew that it was going to bring a lot of pain to the surface, and I just don't think that you're never really ready to deal with that. You're never really ready to relive it. And then there was obviously the years had went past, she had made a life, and she didn't want her neighbours knowing and her friends that she had made, because this, in her mind, and this is her words, was her shame. One night, my mum and my stepdad at the time, John, now they're divorced, but they were together at the time, they had been watching Crime Watch, which is a UK show put out to warn people of the dangers that are happening in the local areas. So there was a murder that had happened on this show, and the way that this person had been murdered, they had been strangled with a rope. Now this rope had been tied in a way that only somebody skilled in tying knots would know how to do this. Like, it isn't just like a kind of loop then tie. This was something that would have been learned at the boys' brigade. And this clicked with my mum. This person had also been raped. My mum said to my stepdad, "You have to go phone." Even though I was little, I can remember this, and I can remember my mum hiding in the bedroom at the time, behind the door, with it open just a little bit, so that she could hear. And she was so scared. Even to do that, she was so scared. They take his name, Ewan's name, and they put it in their records, you know, they've taken note of it. My mum gets a call back, and she's told that that name has been given in. And I remember her just bursting out in tears, thinking, oh my god, he's done it again. Now, it actually came to it that someone else was caught for the murder of this person, and it wasn't Ewan. But this was enough for my mum to go, you know, that could have been him that done that. My mum had really struggled with building relationships in her life. My mum knew that she could not move on from what had happened to her, and every relationship was tainted. This meant that intimacy and a kiss, anything like that, she would see Ewan's face and she would feel too close to these people that she thought she loved. And every single time it failed her. This was the last straw. This was the last straw for her. She knew that something had to change. So my mum and stepdad end up divorcing. Things just don't work out. It ends in happy terms. One night my mum comes up to my bedroom and she says to me, "I've called the police." And I'm like, what for? Like, what's happened? And she said, "I've told them about you." And I was in so much shock, because I had wanted her to do this for ages. You know, I had wanted justice to be served, but it was something that it wasn't my story to tell. It wasn't my thing to get justice on. It was only when she was ready. I remember sitting her down and I said to her, "Mum, I'm going to be there for you throughout this entire thing. Every single step of the way I'm going to be there. And when you feel that you can't go on, I will." And I meant it. That night, the police knocked at the door. And my mum stood at the back of my hallway, and I went to open the door and she said, "No, don't do it, don't do it." And she just panicked, and obviously I'm standing there being like, right, the right decision is just on the other side of this door. But I'm looking at my mum and I'm seeing that she's so scared, and she's crying, and she's begging me not to let them in. It's two guys, and I'm thinking, I can't do this, I can't let them in, because she's scared of men and she needs me right now. So I walk away. Even though I wished I could have opened that door, I had to walk away. They had emailed her and said, "Listen, this is so important. We've been given his name before from Crime Watch, and there's possibly other people that have said that he's done what you've said he's done." So it all clicked in my mum's head that this had already started the ball rolling. She had to go with it. They come back the next day and she welcomes them in this time. They come inside and they're here for, I think it was 6 hours. And my mum talks to them the whole time, you know, and I'm sitting there and of course I'm scared. I'm really, really scared. She's very holding back on the details. They arranged another day to come back. So me and my friend are upstairs, and obviously I need to explain why there's so many police at my house. My mum's downstairs, and this interview was going to last 7 hours. This was where she was going to go into great detail. So things had really escalated, and the next time my mum was to go up to Glasgow, and we were to visit the Procurator Fiscal, which is just a really high up name for someone that's investigating this entire case. So we're up in this building and me and my mum are kind of just talking. Now, when things get really emotional or heavy, I kind of use humour to just brush it off and lighten the mood. So we were laughing and joking, and then the man comes to the door and he says, "Lorna, it's time for you to come in now." So I stand up to go in with my mum and she says, "Declan, no, you can't come in." And I said, "Mum, how can I be here for you throughout all of this if I don't know what's happened? You know, I don't know the full story." So I said, "I'm coming in whether you like it or not." I knew that it was going to be hard, but I highly underestimated it. I didn't know it was going to be this hard. There's some rules. You're not allowed to look at your mum. You're not allowed to touch her. You're not allowed to cuddle her if she cries. You're not allowed to speak. And you have to face the other way. Am I clear? My mum's telling the story just as it happened. Again, he's actually reading it back to her, so it's the statement and he's reading it all back to her and she's saying whether it's correct or not. This is the first I had ever heard it. So I'm sitting there, my mum's crying. I'm not allowed to touch her, not allowed to look. So I'm looking the other way. And obviously I'm emotional, I'm crying, but I have to keep taking deep breaths in because I can't let her see that I'm crying. I have to be strong. He then tells us that there's another victim and she too has came forward. And we couldn't believe it. We weren't allowed to know her name or what had actually happened to her, but the way that he described it was that it was very much like a mirrored image of what had happened to my mum. So it was very, very similar with some changes. So this is in 2017 that my mum comes forward and we start having these interviews. And you'll notice a lot of the time I say we. I know it's my mum, but we're a team. So fast forward 2 years later, and it's 2019. It came the time for court, and my mum had been given these options whether she wanted screens to like block him where she couldn't see him, but still be in the same room. She'd also be given an option to be somewhere else in the court, giving her evidence through a TV that only he could see, but she couldn't see him. We're meeting so many people, like so many high up people that have such long names and titles in front of their names. We were both living a nightmare, but also having horrendous nightmares. Now, we had to be up at 6 to go to court. Crazy things were going through our minds, both of us. If we heard the wind, we would think it was him. He has nothing to lose. What if he kills us? That's what was going through my mind. If we heard a knock at the door, we would panic. I was starting to get that same scared way that my mum had been all her life. So there was this one time where I woke up at 4 in the morning, all the way down to my socks. I was so wet. I took the covers off me and I thought, oh my god, I'm 21 and I've peed the bed. I'm so embarrassed. I realised I never peed. It was sweat, and I had sweated so much it had went all the way through to my mattress. So I had to change, and this was a regular occurrence where I had to wake up at this time and change because I was soaking. I didn't want her knowing that I was so scared. We go up to court, and it's all very new for me and for my mum. We are searched. We have to go through a big door that searches you. Our bags are taken off us. Our possessions are taken off us. They keep things. My mum also had a support worker with her called Kat. And Kat works for the rape crisis team up in Glasgow, which we cannot thank them enough. But Kat was there to really help my mum in a way that I couldn't. She was a woman. She knew. So Kat, if you're watching, thank you so much, because you don't know what you've done for us. Now, my mum was so scared because she couldn't remember things. She couldn't remember the house number that she visited Donna and Ewan's house at. She couldn't remember if she was 12 or 13. She couldn't remember the times or the dates or where she was. All of these minute details that people live their life normally and forget. You know, I could go to the shop and forget what time it was, but being raped and having your body really taken away from you like that, of course you're going to forget. It comes to the time where my mum has to give her evidence of what happened and tell her story. I wanted to support my mum and be there and actually be able to have communication with her. I was not allowed in the courtroom to watch what Ewan was saying while he was on the stand, so none of us know what happened there. While my mum is giving evidence, I'm also not allowed to be in the court because it's called a closed court. We're all taken to a room, past the court through all the back way, and we're put in this room. This room has no windows, no phone service, and nothing to do. It's just got chairs and 3 paintings on the wall. Me and my sister are left in this room for 6 hours by ourselves. My sister is the calmest person that you will ever meet. Like, she's so chill. She was lying on the floor. She was sitting on the chair. She was lying across the chair. She was standing up. She was walking around, and she started to feel so sick. My sister visits the bathroom often because she's feeling very, very sick, and this tiny little room is just really overwhelming for her. I could have got into a lot of trouble for this. Nobody knows this to this day. One of those doors in this very long corridor led into the court. I would lean against the wall and press my ear up against the door just to be there for my mum. because I told her it was going to be. And she might not have seen me, but I was on the other side of that wall. My mum came back into the room and she just tells me that she's fine, but her hands are like this, and they're shaking and they're so tight. I'm sitting beside her on the chair and I'm holding them. And she said to me, my hands are so sore. And she said that because in the courtroom, while she was on the stand, there's a bar. And she was squeezing that bar so tight just for support. Once we were home and Mum was allowed to tell me what happened in that court, she said to me that Ewan's lawyer called her a liar to her face, said that she thinks she's lying, and that why didn't she fight him off up in that house? Why didn't she just fight him off? Why didn't she run outside and get a neighbour or get someone for help? She said all the typical nonsense that someone who clearly hasn't been raped says to someone. His lawyer also worked really hard to try and tear her down while she was in there. So my mum really puts herself back in that little girl's mindset. So when she was telling the story, instead of saying her vagina, she would say my lady or my private parts. We were told that we were going to get to watch Ewan's first police taping, so the very day that they showed up to his house, told them what had happened, interviewed Donna as well as him for 9 hours. 2 of those hours were filmed and we were going to get to watch them. He would sit and pick at little bits of his jumper that had nothing there. He would sort his jumper, he would sort his arms in front of him like this, he would sort the paper that was in front of him, he would sort his pen, just footer with everything. The detectives were obviously picking up on this and they were starting to get a little bit snappy with him. That policeman was called up to the stand in this court and I don't want to say given a row, but he was definitely told off because he wasn't meant to snap. He was meant to keep his composure and just get the answers that was needed, but you can't blame him. Ewan's lawyer said to him, you know, how long have you been doing this and blah blah blah. Just tried to tear him down. He said 30 years, I know the rules. And it was kind of left at that. We were later told that Ewan had met up with this other little girl, 13. Again, I don't want to go into too much detail, but he groomed her. So he made her feel like she was his girlfriend, you know? Now he's, at this point, 21, but he lied in court. He said, no, I've never had a 13-year-old girl in my car. Well, that was proved wrong, because he had this little girl who was now a woman, same age as my mum, testifying against him. He had met her through working at the shipyards, so it was a mutual friend, and he had met this little girl this way. So they, you know, this little girl thinking, oh my god, I have a boyfriend. He would time and time again try and force her to have sex and say, this is what boyfriends and girlfriends do, you need to do this. He grabbed her by her jacket and pulled it so tight that it strangled her and knocked her unconscious. Then he sexually assaulted her. She could remember his car, the colour of it. It was cream, or kind of creamish beigeish colour. The licence plate, which my mum remembers to this very day as well, same with the colour of the car. I remember hearing this story while sitting right beside my mum and she's bursting out crying. So am I, because at this point we realised that this person was a psycho. One thing you should know about Ewan McIntosh is that he is one of the biggest liars in the entire world. But the best thing about it is that he cannot remember who he told which lie to, so he trips himself up all the time. As you can imagine, he completely lied through the entire thing. He kept saying nope, he didn't rape Lorna and that she was a liar and that she made it up, and just really tried to make my mum feel this size, which made me all the more mad at him. So whenever he did mess up in little things, this was like the best feeling. To really put into perspective just how much Ewan lied, he had told the court that Donna was his first kiss and that she'd actually taught him how to kiss, so he had learned from her. So he had never kissed anybody or been with anybody until Donna. But now we know that this is a lie because he had sexually assaulted people as well as raped her little sister. This guy had thrown in the question of did you rape Lorna several times throughout this interview, just to try and catch his first natural reaction. It got to the point where he had been asked this question multiple times, and when the policeman said to him, did you rape Lorna, he went, I can't remember. I mean, I never, no, I don't know. And this was when the policeman got mad, which was why he was brought on the stand and kind of told off for getting a little bit mad. But it's because he knew that Ewan was a liar at this point. Now here's where it gets really complicated for the sister bond part. When Ewan was being arrested and he was watched for months and months, I don't know what he said to Donna. I don't know what kind of lies he came up with, but as I said, he's very good at lying. And when someone's been manipulated for so long, it gets to a point where they would rather question themselves than anybody else. So Ewan would, at this point, never be wrong in what he said to Donna. Never. She would never question it. Donna had said something that completely contradicted what Ewan had said. Donna was meant to appear in court and failed to turn up, so a warrant was going to be sent out for her arrest if she didn't cooperate with the court. I don't think that she is aware of what's happening. Like, I just had a feeling that he was going home every night, lying to her and pretending it wasn't that big a deal, because this is what he'd done. So Donna decided that she couldn't make it to the court, so she was going to do it via TV. So we were all sitting waiting for Donna to come in, and she appears on the TV screen. If she hadn't spoke, I would never have known this was her. She is so dishevelled. She also was sitting there with a broken arm. I don't know about you, but I do know someone, and I'm not making any accusations, but I do know someone that their signature move was bending people's arms up behind their back. Isn't that what Ewan taught Lorna and Tony to do to someone at school? Anyways, I can't be too sure on that, but Donna's story was that she fell. She had the biggest panic attack. She had to have a fan set up for her because she couldn't get any air. She had to have water because she couldn't breathe properly, and she kept having to take moments to breathe throughout being interviewed. And I think this was because she was confronted with not me and my mum, she wasn't allowed to see us, or Ewan, but the Lord, all of the lawyers and all of the jury. And this was huge, and I think she highly underestimated it. One of his own daughters doesn't even speak to him. When the police showed up to get evidence from her that this possibly couldn't be true and, you know, say all these great things about your loving dad, she said he should have been put away a long time ago and closed the door on them. What daughter would say that if this wasn't true? This is the same daughter that said to Granny Lena about her skirt being too long and her dad saying to go put on a shorter one. Donna had refused to admit that she was working night shift at the start, but then later on went on to say that she was working night shift, so she was proved wrong in that. And in that very moment that she was proved wrong, you could see that she was confused, because it's like she knew the truth, but knew that she was speaking lies, but couldn't understand why she couldn't let the truth come out. It's the most strangest thing, but it's literally the personified definition of someone being manipulated. The police then asked her, did Lorna tell you about Ewan raping her? And she said, yes, she did. And she said, and why didn't you believe her? And she said, as soon as I hung up the phone, I asked him again, and I've never stopped asking him to this day. Donna was then asked, did you know about the kiss that went on between Lorna and Ewan? And Donna said, yeah, my little sister who was 13 asked Ewan, who's 21, for a kiss. Mum's lawyer then went on to say, Donna, what if I was to tell you that it was Ewan that offered your little 13-year-old sister a kiss? And Donna said, well, if I had known that, I would have left him at the time. It really seemed that at this point, everything that Donna was saying while Ewan was sitting there was contradicting his story. Because he had lied to her and not told her the truth, was completely digging his grave for him, and he couldn't do anything to stop it. This was that karma I was telling my mum would happen. This is these lies that he has to remember but couldn't remember who he told them to, finally catching up with him. Fast forward to the last day of court. We were mentally and physically drained. I remember just looking at the jury and begging them for the last time, like, just please don't believe this. This is our one and only chance. Either the court was closing or the Lord had to leave and go somewhere else, so it meant that it was going to carry from Friday, leave Saturday and Sunday, and then continue on Monday. And I thought, oh my god, like I cannot think about this the whole weekend and have him be free for another 2 days. I can't have it. We're sitting out there for about 40 minutes, and the next part that I'm about to tell you happened within the space of 15 minutes. We were brought back into the court with the police. The jury then come in, and I don't even know how to describe this, but they were snarling at him. They were growling at him. They were looking at Ewan like a piece of trash. And it was at this very point that I was like, what did that mean? Because these people were sitting emotionless this entire time. What's changed? One woman came in and she stood up, and she was the speaker for the entire jury. They had all made a decision that she was going to be the one to speak, and she stood up and she looked over at me and my mum and she just smiled. And I thought, I really needed that. Like, I needed that tiny little bit of reassurance that someone there had a heart. My mum's sitting with her head down this whole time, and she's just, I don't know whether she's very religious, so I don't know whether she was praying or she was just hoping for something good to come of this, or something justified. I have it written right here in front of me what he was charged with. He was charged with 2 sexual assaults, lewd and libidinous behaviour, and 2 rapes and sexual assault. It was called a unanimous decision, which meant everybody agreed that he was guilty. Now, it was read out bit by bit, so for the other girl, as well as my mum, it was all read out individually, and she said he was guilty on all 6 counts, and everybody agreed. Just hearing someone say guilty guilty, guilty 6 times, and just to kind of hear that being said to him for the first time in his life without him being able to stand up and go, oh no, let me tell some lies and try and get away with it. It felt like a relief. The entire case was listed under the Murdoch doctrine. I have it written here in front of me because it's really technical, but the short version of it is where it requires more than 2 people to back up each other's story. But because of this case being so identical from 2 different people who have never met, didn't know each other, lived so far away from each other, there would be no way for them to fabricate this and make this whole accusation up against him, and that was his only fight, that they were a liar. While Ewan was sitting there and they were saying guilty, 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 he started to put his head down, and at that point I knew we had got him. I knew my mum had got him. The 2 security guards at each side of him took out their handcuffs, and I looked at my mum, and she's sitting there just crying and her head down, and I'm looking at the both of them thinking, his head's down as well as my mum's. I don't want this. Picked up her chin and I made her look and I said, Mum, you're going to want to see this. But it was a special moment. And I knew that if she's seen it, it was a way that it would help overwrite those memories of what he'd done to her. When it came time to sentence Ewan, it was up in Edinburgh. And then there was this boy. And my mum knew who this boy was. It was Ewan's son, another one of his children. He was sitting behind us and he said nothing to us. He did smile at my mum, but all he done was cry the whole time. And this kind of goes back to me saying that I don't think Ewan was telling everybody the full story, because this seems like his son had got the news, or the family had got the news, that Ewan had been kept away from them for the 3 days. He wasn't allowed contact with anyone while being held at the court jail cells. Then when he was getting sentenced, it probably all clicked for them, like, oh my god, he's been lying to us, what else has he been lying about? So I think that little boy came, I say little boy, he's older than me, but he came for answers. Ewan was brought up from the jail cells at the right of me. When he was walking up past us, he looked directly at us, and I think, to be fair, he was looking to have contact with my mum, but he caught me, and I remember just staring at him, and it was a stare of, I'm not scared of you, and I know that you're going to get what you deserve, whether you get the jail or not. And the Lord comes in, he starts talking, and I started to panic, because he says, I'm going to take into consideration your age at the time. And I'm thinking, like, what are you talking about? Because I'm 21. You don't just rape people and then grow out of it as you get older and think, oh, it was just a phase. He also was going to take into consideration how long ago it was. And at this point, I started to panic, like, really badly. I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me to watch my mum go through a mental breakdown. I don't have that in me. And I don't have it in me for myself, because I felt like I was going to have one. He was given 12 months for what he had done to that other girl, which I found so shocking and so little. He was given 8 years for what he had done to my mum, and I was so relieved. I was so happy, because I was like, finally, finally that big bad scary monster had been put away, and he never gets to hurt anybody else ever again. And my mum and that other little girl had done that. Ewan is in prison right now, and it's okay. I heard it's nice this time of year, so hope he's enjoying his stay. Better make it homely. I don't think it's a good idea if he starts boasting about how he was a policeman in there, because people really don't like that. We've also been informed that Ewan has joined a program and he's found Jesus. But then again, I'm sure you guys have gathered up your opinion on Ewan and know fine well that this is his manipulation kicking in. He'll think that if he joins this and starts pretending that Jesus saved his life, then he'll get out earlier. He's a manipulator, and this is what he does. Right now, Ewan is 56 years old, so by the time he gets out, he's going to be an old man, and I'm kind of thinking, is there much of a point of you even getting out? He's never going to be able to get a job, he's never going to be able to live near a school, and he's never, ever going to be able to be around a child again. What is really crappy is that Ewan has left scars on everybody. My mum with her sister, her sister herself, and even my granny Lena. You know, the whole family was badly affected by this, and this happens way too often in life. I just want to thank you guys for watching this. It has been so hard, but I needed to let you in. I needed someone to maybe find this video and think, my daughter said something similar like that, or I've told someone that someone's done that to me, and this will help you. And if it has, I hope that you can be brave. And I know you can. Somehow the media found out about it all. His name and story is printed all across the internet, forever. Guess we will never know how that happened. Mum and myself are attending therapy, and this is the first time in her life she's able to speak about it openly and release that little girl that was so trapped. To my mum, I'm so proud. Now you can be free. Turns out, everything that Ewan said would happen to her has happened to him. Nobody believed him. He lost everything, and I'm thinking now he should probably stay quiet about it all. Because of you, a little girl gets to be 12 and never know about the monster that could have been. Those woods aren't so scary once you stop running and realise your roar was always louder. If this were a fairy tale, there would be some happy ending. Not this time. There was no happy ending. Just a hell of a new beginning. The end. Hey Mum, how do you feel?
As ready as I can be.